What are some of the best cybersecurity jobs, and how do you land one of these amazing careers? Well, this is exactly what we're going to cover in this video. And in fact, we're going to go step by step on 8 different positions that you can get, starting from zero all the way up to landing one of those dream cybersecurity jobs that everyone is pining for. But I'm going to teach you that no matter where you're starting from zero or even mid-career, the education, the certifications, the experience, and the time that it takes in order to go from wherever you're at to exactly where you want to be in this fast-paced, purpose-driven, ever-evolving, and future-proof career. Let's jump straight in. What's up, future and current cyber defenders and ethical hackers? I am professional hacker and professional cyber defender HackWithZach, aka Zach Marcy. I am here to help cyber mentor anybody from where they're at to become exactly who they want to be in the cybersecurity industry, no matter where you're starting. If you're a career transitioner and you're currently in this industry or in IT and want to get into a specific role in cybersecurity, this video is going to be exactly for you. Or if you're somebody that's on the outside looking in and you want to get that first job, I've got exactly the blueprint that's going to take in order for you to start that. But before we jump into this, I want to make sure that you get this video series because it's going to stack. It's going to stack one video on top of the other, and it's going to be incredibly important that you follow this as a blueprint or a guideline, a roadmap. And you only can do that if you like and subscribe and also click that notification bell. You're going to get access to all of my current and future videos as they come out, but you're going to get lost in the series if you aren't notified when they come out. I'll go ahead and pause for a sec. Go ahead and like, subscribe, and hit that alert button. Cool. Welcome back. Important table alert. This here are the top 8 jobs that we're going to cover in this presentation, and the relative level, time in years it takes to get the role, and the key certificates that you need to achieve in order to get these roles. In future videos, we are going to start covering the projects and some of the other technology stacks that you're going to need to get inside of your repertoire in order to develop the skills that it takes to land some of these roles. But the very first thing I'm going to recommend you do is start with the end in mind. Identify the job that you want. I did this myself, and I do this with any of the mentoring clients that I have. Personally, I said, hey, you know what? In 3 to 5 years, I want to become a cybersecurity architect. I'm going to give myself a 5-year time frame in order to make it happen. And these are the roles that I need. These are the certifications that I need. This is the education process that I need in order to make it happen. And I did it. You personally can do the same thing. So identify which one of these you might want to do, or just kind of, in all honesty, you could actually jump ahead in the timeline and go to where I describe them out. Go through and learn some of these roles because I'm going to get in depth of each one of these. So the first role we're going to discuss here is the SOC analyst. SOC analyst monitor for threats, analyze alerts, and respond to security incidents real time. They utilize things like SIMs or SOARs, or even some kind of like data visualization tool that monitors security events as they come in. And as they monitor those alerts, they determine whether or not it is news or noise. The noise gets tossed in the trash, or it gets passed on as a false positive, or just not something to respond to. Or the news, which is some kind of hacker trying to get in, or some kind of hacker that has penetrated the network, Those are then either responded to by the SOC analyst, or it's escalated up to an incident responder or some kind of senior SOC analyst that is trained to be able to handle whatever that event might be. The education and experience in these are inversely related. It is an entry-level job in theory, right? But for whatever you lack in your experience, you're going to have to make up for in some kind of education or knowledge. So, let's say you have zero cybersecurity education at all, but you do have experience working with networks. Maybe you've been an IT help desk that has worked with people that have blown their own, let's say, malware inside of their system, and you're having to help them recover their system in its entirety. Or let's say you've been under pressure to help somebody restore their entire system because they've done something that has disrupted their network. Those are the types of jobs, like a network monitor or a network incident responder. Those are some of the areas where your experience will offset needing to have an abundance of education to get started as a SOC analyst. But without that experience, you're going to have to increase the amount of education and the exhibited demonstration of let's say putting in the work in a playground or some kind of home lab where you do your own at-home sim with like Wazoo or Security Onion or some kind of like freeware with Elk Stack, going and grabbing Kali Linux or Parrot Linux, attacking a vulnerable web server or a vulnerable web application, picking up those incidents in your sim, and then responding and figuring out, okay, I recognize what this looks like inside of a sim. I know what to do in either escalating this or mitigating this, and putting in the work and the effort to get the knowledge that way. Also, you see a lot of these roles filled by cybersecurity students who have went through their first couple of classes, usually network foundations, cybersecurity foundations, incident response, or cybersecurity analysis. So essentially, those classes will give you exactly what you need in order to perform the SOC analyst role. Just to recap a little bit here, we want to make sure whatever experience we lack, we make up for in home labbing, classroom education, and certification, and vice versa. This is how we break into entry-level jobs. The next roles that I'm going to jump into will discuss how you need to put a little bit more effort and energy into that upfront education if you're going in with zero experience in order to get. Let's jump into them. The cybersecurity analyst. The cybersecurity analyst is kind of like a catch-all title for anybody in a cybersecurity organization or an organization as a whole that can assess and improve the security posture of the organization. You're going to wind up reviewing logs, doing patch management, vulnerability scans, compliance checks, and full transparency. This title in the past was a lot more of like a Swiss Army knife type position that also can vary from a junior all the way to a very expert level of role. Inside of being a cybersecurity analyst, the thing that sets it apart from being a SOC analyst is the SOC analyst is sitting there all day focused on alerts that are coming through a SIM. The cybersecurity analyst is going to have a little bit of reviewing logs and monitoring it, but then going out and making sure that the patches are done appropriately. You might actually be working on someone's actual desktop, helping to harden it. You're going to act as a help desk at times to get like in case somebody has a compromised account or somebody has a compromised system or computer, you're going to be the person that's going to wind up going in and reinstalling all of the patches, making sure that everything is up to date. This, although is titled as a junior to mid-level job, really depends on what the responsibilities and expectations are. Now, I can say this, the very similar to the SOC analyst, the amount of education and experience that you need are both inversely related. The only way I see most people getting cybersecurity analyst jobs that require more of like a junior level are by having some kind of experience somewhere somehow, maybe doing some of your like patch management or vulnerability scans in a, let's say, like your student lab at university, or taking on a role as a SOC analyst, then transitioning into a more generalist role. Yes, SOC analysts have more specificity, but you can then take on a more generalist role where you're actually even able to get into some like incident response and some mitigation than you would be if you're just a SOC analyst. The necessity to have an education, that bar is starting to lower down. If you go into things like Try Hack Me or Hack the Box, they actually have cybersecurity analyst paths where you can go in and get the actual real world, well, it's lab setup, but it's very similar to real world experience that you would need in order to be able to perform these roles. It usually, on an experience scale, without an actual degree, you probably need about 2 to 3 years of this type of experience and in order to offset your education. But I am seeing a lot of people that come out of, let's say, their cybersecurity degree or a very cybersecurity focused boot camp with the ability to slide right into a cybersecurity analyst role and nail it. You almost every single cybersecurity analyst role expects a minimum of a security plus, and it will go a long way to be able to springboard you into being able to perform these roles. But most of them request that you have CompTIA's CISA plus, which is CYSA plus. And even a lot of them are requiring the EC Council certified ethical hacker, which is, again, very similar to a Swiss Army knife of understanding how attackers get into and penetrate a system and how you can block them and understand the tools and technology that it takes to get them out. This is a tough role because it's really dependent upon the job requirement and responsibilities, and pay very close attention inside of each one of the roles that you're applying for as a cybersecurity analyst, their technology stacks, the expectation of your experience, because you're going to see not all cybersecurity analyst jobs are built the same, but they are an amazing role. There are a lot of these that are underfulfilled, and you might just be, let's say, a 2 or 3 month home lab away from being able to nail a cybersecurity analyst job that's going to pay you 6 figures, and also be something that you're going to be able to grow in for the next 5 to 10 years. So this cybersecurity analyst role is a really important one. It is a foundational one, but again, they are not all the same. With that being said, as this is the Swiss Army knife, now we're going to start getting into more of the roles that require just a specific skill set and are focused more on just one or a couple of tasks. Let's jump into those. The IAM analyst. IAM is an acronym that stands for Identity and Access Management. And when you are one of these analysts, your role and responsibility is going to be managing user access, enforcing least privilege, and maintaining authentication systems like Azure's AD, Okta sign-on, AWS identity management, various things where the ID of the individual for an organization only has access into the files, the systems, and to the role or responsibilities that they have, and nothing more. This is a super important role, as a lot of users that wind up getting hacked or phished, if they wind up having more responsibility, or somebody finds a way to get some privilege account and they're able to utilize it without any check or balance, then essentially an entire organization can get compromised off of just one identity being hacked. That is where the IAM analyst really is a very important role to an organization. It is a mid-level, but there are people with the right education, minimal experience, but definitely is going to require you being focused and getting the knowledge that you need, either through a certification or labs. You definitely, at minimum, are going to need some experience on your own or within an organization of knowing whatever the technology stack is for IAM management. Most organizations wind up utilizing Azure's Active Directory. And at minimum, most of these roles would require you to get, let's say, probably be like Security Plus certified, and it's a 90s Lexus SE300 from Microsoft. I believe the name of that is Identity and Access Administrator, Microsoft's Identity and Access Administrator certification, SE300. If for whatever you don't have in experience, like maybe you get a role at your university, or a go and volunteer in an organization where you're helping them with, let's say, network access and giving people privileges. For whatever you lack in that experience, you're going to have to make up for inside of your education. This one is a little bit harder to hack lab, because a lot of these multi or single sign-on or cloud-based identity and access management systems require you to have access to that system in order to learn it. For the most part, most of these IAM analysts are going to need an in somehow, some way. And if you are, let's say that you're a SOC analyst and you bump into one of the IAM analysts or one of the IAM specialists in the role, and you ask and say, hey, do you mind teaching me how to do this? I would like to help you out with provisioning some identity. And for the most part, I remember at my SOC, it was the HR person that was responsible. They essentially were trained on how to be the IAM person. And when somebody got hired or fired, that HR person and the people within that person's organization under them were responsible for provisioning, decommissioning, and either escalating or de-escalating privileges based on somebody's role. And it became mandatory on my personal level to give people access to some of our systems from the SOC participation. And I took it on as helping out when they were out of office. I was trusted as a manager. I followed the systems and the procedures for a lot of these privileges, and just made sure I was following the system and learning it, so I could step in and become an Azure AD IAM manager. Just because of my experience with it, I went out and I found opportunities to be able to learn it. These are some of the things that you can do to do this. Now, it may sound like it doesn't have much growth, but coming in, you're just going to be following the systems and procedures that a company, either a mature company has already established or that they take on from whoever the setup specialists are. But as you start getting experience in this and you start learning a lot of different systems within the network, you also can start creating and customizing the IM management for an entire organization, which then means you have the skill set that it would allow you to start getting into, let's say, identity and access management, as opposed to just a person that's sitting in the role and doing identities or not. And then you're overseeing teams. So there is some growth within this. The salary ranges aren't quite as good as they are with some of the other roles, but it can be a really good springboard into other areas of cybersecurity where your entry level is one that's lower barrier. It's very specific on a technology stack. And then since you're in the role, you can start stacking on some other experience and some other certifications to transition into other roles. Which leads me to another very similar type of role that can get you entry, but at the same time, it's one of those that isn't quite as sexy as some of the others, but it is a good place to start. Let's jump into that one. The GRC auditor. Got another acronym for you here. It's governance, risk, and compliance. The GRC auditor is responsible for auditing controls, ensuring compliance when it comes to certain frameworks that dictate the appropriate compliance or laws for an organization. Think the IRS making sure that you are SOC 2 compliant, or the healthcare, HIPAA, Health Information Portability Act, or the PCI DSS, which is the credit card system. If you're going to be doing transactions that get delivered online, you have to be PCI DSS compliant, or else a lot of these gateways won't even grant you access to their payment gateway systems. You have the HIPAA, NIST, ISO compliance, GDPR, which if you have an international business that wants to do business in the EU, the European Union, you need to be GDPR certified. And you're going to manage all of this compliance, all of this governance, and you're also going to be somebody that assesses where your company might be exposed, deliver reports and analysis based on that exposure for risk, and then report it to the appropriate people that will need to go and get insurance or do patch management. In fact, a lot of GRC auditors have the capability of transitioning from this kind of like an entry level or very specified point as an auditor into, let's say, patch management, or being a person that actually goes and does the work in order to stay compliant. So this is a career that, if you get the knowledge, which usually the education level, if you're going to be doing risk and compliance, they want you to have experience in some kind of like auditing or accounting, even cybersecurity, or they want you to have taken, like, let's say, a boot camp and have that knowledge from it. I'll tell you right now, Gerald Auger of Simply Cyber. First and foremost, I'm going to include a link down below to both his GRC system that he offers as a learning platform, and also you need to be on his threat intelligence feed. It's probably one of the best. And he also, here I am kind of pitching his stuff, but if you want to get into GRC, Gerald Auger's course is a really good one to start with. Now, I'll say this: when it comes to opportunities to grow within this, you're going to have to get an education on the job in order to transition out of GRC because it's so specified. But let's say you've identified as you're doing audits that you want to go and do, let's say, patch management. While you're working inside of being a GRC auditor, you can go and study to become a cybersecurity analyst. And it's a very common transition. And they get paid right around the same, but you also, once you get into an organization, you're working in, let's say, GRC, you also have the ability to potentially cross train across some of these systems, know those systems, and learn how to make the transition into a different type of job that might have more growth and less capped top end. A lot of the GRC auditors go on to become GRC managers or even cybersecurity managers. But that cybersecurity management does require you, if you want to start getting into like senior and principal level or management level, if by starting through the GRC process, you will really need to do a lot of education, labbing, and experience while you're doing the role. Now, some of the labs and projects that you can do, you can go and create like a mock NIST 8053 or an ISO 27001 compliance checklist. You can perform a risk assessment for a financial company, or you can go and volunteer with any startup or any organization that is taking credit cards and making sure that they are compliant. Certifications. The CRISC, which is, I have to read this directly, Certification in Risk and Information Systems Control. They also have the CISA, which is the Certified Information Systems Auditor. Some of the base foundations, I still say everybody needs to go get the ISC 2CC. That would help a lot because you get exposure on a lot of these frameworks in that education system. And then you can springboard into some of these more advanced type of certifications to learn how to be an auditor. That's kind of it. This one is pretty straightforward. The experience that you don't have can be made up for with education, but this role and responsibility is very specific, and I highly recommend making sure that you know exactly how to do a lot of these GRC type of audits before even thinking and attempting to get a role in this. The next few that we're going to cover inside of this series are going to get a little bit more sexy and generalist. In fact, they're more of like the mid to mid senior type of roles. And there are also some things that all of the beginning certifications and jobs that I explained can be utilized as a springboard to get into some of these. Let's jump into the next one, which is one of everybody's favorite, the penetration tester or ethical hacker. So anytime somebody finds out that I'm in cybersecurity or asks me about cybersecurity, they ask, hey, so you hack systems for a living? Or, hey, can you hack my computer? Hey, can you hack XXX? They think of this type of role. And I'll say this. The role in and of itself is pretty fun, but it has a very high barrier to be a very effective and good penetration tester and ethical hacker. It requires a very wide range of tools and operating systems across the board, but then also requires you to have a in-depth understanding of this wide array of tools and operating systems and web security appliances with a deep understanding of some of the holes that might be in each one, some of the legacy systems, some of the emerging technologies, and where you might be able to get access into these systems from them. This is a role and responsibility that is definitely mid to senior level. It's very difficult for people directly out of just college to get one of these roles without going through some additional education or creating some kind of like hack lab and getting a lot of experience in very specified types of tools that for the most part it's hard to get in a four-year institution. But this is also one of those areas where a lot of self-made or self-taught people come from. Building a home lab utilizing Kali Linux or Parrot Linux, which are Linux distributions for hackers and ethical hackers, but then going in, standing up your own instances of a, let's say, a vulnerable application and being able to do some of like the OWASP type of attacks against web applications. You can specialize in being a web application penetration tester. When it comes to being an enterprise system penetration tester, it requires a much different skill set that is a lot deeper and wider than it would just going after web applications. But also remember, even if you are a web application tester, you're going to need to know the systems on the back end. So if you get in, how can you privilege escalate? How can you shut down the web server? You're not going to do it as an ethical hacker, but do you have the capability of being able to type it in, take a snapshot of, hey, look, I have root privilege access right here. I can hit enter and wipe out your hard drive completely without doing it. You don't do it as an ethical hacker. But you're going to have a very good analytical skills. You're going to need to have thinking outside of the box skills. You're also going to need to be able to write really good reports and communicate in both technology jargon and clear jargon how you perform these tests, where the organization is vulnerable and why, and being able to submit these reports in a timely fashion. Uh, the ethical hacking and penetration testing is when people get into it, it isn't what a lot of people think. It's not just sitting in a dark room with your hoodie on, like I talk about with like HackWithZach. It essentially is a professional that understands systems, web servers, applications, vulnerabilities, and different types of hacking tools and scripts to be able to try to get into a system, and then also paying attention to a lot of the vulnerabilities that are on the horizon or getting discovered real time, and utilizing that knowledge and that staying up with threat intelligence to essentially go at a lot of these systems and being able to show and demonstrate how you can get into the system so you can educate whoever's employed you to patch or fix that vulnerability. This is, I have seen people go through a cybersecurity boot camp that's cost them anywhere from, let's say, about $5,000 to $50,000 and come out and be really effective penetration testers that have created really good careers. This is also something where certifications on top of education are mandatory. A little less just basic bachelor's degree foundation, a lot more specificity, where a lot of this can be self-taught, but it would probably take you a little bit longer. A lot of these tools are open source, which means they're also available for hackers to be able to do for free. But it does take a while to learn and gather the skills that it really takes in order to be a very effective and good penetration tester that has a good career and future. There are some organizations now that are doing penetration tests as a service. They're taking some, let's say, undergrad students in, or people have just graduated in, or even some people with, let's say, a cybersecurity plus certification, and teaching them their system of web application hacking. And they're then selling it as a service, but they will take you through a 3 to 6 month training while paying you anywhere from, let's say, $12 to $15 an hour, whatever minimum wage is right now. And you might get stuck into, let's say, a year employment contract at $15 to $20 an hour. But you're essentially getting paid and trained on the job. This is a good opportunity for somebody that's looking to break into and be, pun intended, break into the penetration testing market, specifically in cybersecurity, and has the capability of being able to take on a role with not in that level of pay that a lot of career transitioners are trying to break into. Um, if I were starting all over, I would, and let's say I was trying to get into and be a penetration tester, I would keep a day job and then start doing some of these hack the box paths for penetration testing, or try hack me. I'll include some links down below, where you can learn things like Kali Linux and the OWASP top 10, things like command injection, SQL injection, a lot of the ways that you can penetrate into an application. Also, some of the OWASP API vulnerabilities, which again, that's APIs are a specialty that a lot of penetration testers are pivoting into now. Also, staying up with AI based tools. AI penetration testers are going to be up against AI hackers, and that's going to be the wave of the future. You have to make sure, even if you're in your career, that you are ever evolving. This is going to require you to a consistent upgrade of your skill set as you go. And full transparency, like, you can go get your certified ethical hacker or pen test plus from CompTIA and get started in this. But to really get into and own this career, it's going to take a little bit more, like going and getting things like the OSCP, which is, it's a pretty difficult certification. I hear it's one of the harder certifications to get. That is the Offensive Security Certified Professional. Penetration testers are considered red team. This is the standard for somebody that's going to be considered a really good penetration tester. One of the certifications that's required if you want to get hired on by a really good company, an organization that does penetration testing. This one would need its own video in and of itself to get into the nuance of this. If this is the route that you want to go, I really recommend getting into one of these entry level roles, getting exposed to a lot of this information, being in the industry, getting some experience, and then labbing or utilizing a company that would be willing to pay for you to go to a cybersecurity boot camp for penetration testing, or has like some kind of like education credits, before just trying to jump into this like wet behind the ears, fresh out of a degree. That was the sexy one. Let's start getting into some of the guys that really make the cybersecurity industry go around, and that would be the cybersecurity engineer. This is a senior level for sure, and essentially your job as an engineer is to design, implement, and manage the security controls across networks, clouds, and applications. This one in particular requires experience. I will say this. As you get into these systems, you're going to learn why experience is very important in this role. Information systems and the way networks are set up tend to be very quirky, and you cannot underestimate the amount of skills that you learn of handling tricky integrations of systems across different systems, especially when they're not made by the same company. Education level, the foundations, getting a bachelor's degree or even a master's degree in cybersecurity or computer engineering will give you a real leg up. In fact, the master's degree in computer engineering is a great one for somebody that really wants to take your engineering skills, cybersecurity engineering skills, to the next level. Uh, this experience level, it'll take around 3 to 8 years in order to really own being able to be a good cybersecurity engineer. And you're looking at experience in the industry in like IT security, network engineering is a great springboard from. In fact, almost every cybersecurity engineer that I know has a background in network engineering somehow. And this winds up becoming something where you even specialize in cybersecurity engineering across technology stacks or across very specific types of deployments. Let me explain. Um, Even like DevSecOps is really important too. The technology stacks, if the company that you work for is a Linux shop with a Palo Alto firewall and a CrowdStrike endpoint detection system, um, along with a um, let's say uh, Azure AD uh, cloud manager for identity and access management, those exact tech stacks are going to be vital for you to know and learn on how to integrate them all together. Now, if the company winds up being a Microsoft shop and everything from Microsoft Sentinel to Microsoft Defender to the Azure Identity and Access Management to the Internet Information Systems web server and Windows machines connecting to the system for your users, like then you're going to need to have all of that technology stack at your disposal. This is a role and responsibility where the understanding of specific technology stacks is going to be vital to any role. If you go through some of these job listings and you look it out, first and foremost, most of these guys are not getting paid under $100,000. In fact, the more senior that you get, you're looking at getting into like the 160 plus range for a really good cybersecurity engineer. But as you need to learn certain technology stacks first, and then you can start taking on and adding in more to your skill set to upgrade and potentially move to another job or another role. But it's really dependent upon the organization that you get into. And I'll say this: one of the best places that you can become a cybersecurity engineer is transitioning from a SOC that is security solution agnostic. In other words, the responsibilities and roles of the cybersecurity engineer within a SOC is one where you're having to learn a bunch of different cybersecurity solutions that you'll have to engineer across the board, and you get exposure to it. I'm going to tell you, this has been my own experience, and a lot of my friends who came from the old SOC that I used to work in, where we were cybersecurity agnostic, we learned how to utilize firewalls. Four different firewall systems from four different vendors. We learned how to utilize three different SIM systems, from Splunk to Security Onion to the Google system, and even Microsoft and AWS's SIM systems. We learned endpoint detection devices from SentinelOne to CrowdStrike. In fact, we resold CrowdStrike to our people that did not have them and installed them. We would get flown out and install them and then configure them, and it was a lot of fun. And we got a lot of experience and exposure in that environment. And I was a little bit of a cybersecurity engineer, but I was not, that was not just my role. I supported most of the engineers that did it. So if I wanted to go and transition into this, what I would do personally is learn, look for the jobs and the roles that I want. I would learn the technology stack for it. And then I would either get a certification in that system, like AWS or like Azure security specialist for where you can learn to stand up and engineer an entire AWS instance or Azure instance. This is a little bit harder to create your own home lab on unless you are utilizing open source types of cybersecurity appliances. There are open source WAFs, open source SIMs, open source firewalls, but it would be better if you are educating yourself along the way with some of these labs that more of these technology stacks offer, like the Microsoft suites or even the AWS suites, even some of like the CrowdStrike endpoint detection type of suites. They're amazing at what they do. Palo Alto does offer some education, but that's the thing. You're going to have to pick a path and you're going to have to go down it and learn how to do some of these and specialize in some of these cybersecurity solutions. And it can be tough. There's some other considerations too. If you want to work for a big company that does their own specialized services, think of cybersecurity companies like Akamai. Akamai has all of their own instances and solutions where you would have to work within the company even to learn it. When you do learn it, it's very difficult for you to be able to transition out of that into another role or responsibility elsewhere because all of your knowledge and systems that you've stood up were just for Akamai. F5, Kaseya, all these places have their own kind of like home-baked solutions for bot management and security that would require you to go and learn somewhere else a completely different technology stack. So this is why this is a senior level role. There are some industry leaders, and I do recommend making sure like AWS and Azure security are ones that you learn because they are more standardly used across most organizations. And certifications that you're going to need to get, two in particular that come to mind: the CASP Plus from CompTIA, or the GX Security Essentials, the GSEC, are very good foundational. Actually, they're you need to have experience in order to get these certifications, but they're very good foundations and transitioning from a generalist role into a more specifically cybersecurity engineer role. Um, you're also going to need to learn to automate a lot of your standing up of these devices. And this is where DevOps start coming into play with like learning PowerShell and Python. Python's really widely used with cybersecurity engineers. We're doing and running scripts that are going to make changes across multiple hundreds, even thousands of systems without having to log in and just do the change manually all over the place. This is another one where AI, another position where AI is going to be the thing of the future, where you integrate some scripts and have AI interact with a lot of these solutions and help stand them up across the board. Uh, this one starts getting really deep, and it also is a very good foundation to getting into the even more senior and principal roles, which are the cybersecurity consultant. Definitely senior level. And in fact, a cybersecurity consultant is responsible for advising and improving the security posture, managing the risk, implementing the security solutions across an entire organization. And this requires years of experience, requires years of education, and it requires some soft skill that we're going to get into. These two on the same level principal roles of a cybersecurity architect and cybersecurity consultant. The cybersecurity consultant is kind of look at it as an advanced cybersecurity project manager with soft skills and project management skills that you need in order to move security project, like big security implementations from beginning to end with a very big roadmap forward. The other role I'm going to explain here, I'm going to cover a little bit inside of here, because when you're transitioning from any of the more junior roles, you kind of have to pick a path of being a consultant or an architect. The architect has a tendency to be a little bit more behind the scenes, and the technical skills or like DevOps skills tend to be a little bit more in demand, whereas the consultant, the project management and the communication skills, the soft skills, tend to be a little bit higher. So when you're transitioning from, let's say, like a SOC analyst or a cybersecurity analyst into one of these like cybersecurity consultant or cybersecurity architect roles, take into consideration which of these you really get energized by, and start developing those soft skills in advance, or start developing some of the strategy or some of the idea of long-term kind of like roadmap planning in advance, because these senior roles are just shy of like executive level management, and they're important. These are probably some of the most important non quote unquote managerial roles that any cybersecurity professional is going to take on. Let's stick with cybersecurity consultant for the time being. Definitely helps to have minimum a bachelor's degree in information technology or cybersecurity. And it's a lot easier to understand scope and scale of project management, and a lot of this is boxed up for you if you go get a master's degree in information technology. They start teaching you a lot of these skills of being able to scope out entire projects and entire implementations, all of the requirements that it takes to really own projects, see them from beginning to end, managing the people underneath you. Like a bunch of different cybersecurity analysts are going to bring you risk assessments and vulnerability scans, penetration testers. They're going to bring you all of this detailed information. And then you put together and you scope out exact projects for the cybersecurity engineers to go and perform. You've got to know a little bit about each one of these roles, but definitely have a very wide skill set of how to implement each one of these, how to patch each one of these vulnerabilities, and understand how to move those projects forward. You're going to conduct full security assessment for either simulated or real environments. Then you're going to have to be able to deliver executive level reports summarizing risk and mitigation. When you can be an independent consultant that gets hired out, and these dudes are getting paid, or these women are getting paid $300, $400 an hour to perform a lot of these types of roles and assessment. Essentially, you're going to have to create a team underneath you doing this, that's doing the penetration testing, or take even some of the resources and mobilizing the resources that these companies have to get you that information, and then being able to sit down and manage all of their roles and responsibilities to harden the security and get defensive depth of an entire organization. Or you could do this within the actual organization in and of itself. There are a lot of companies that hire, you might see this either as a cybersecurity consultant or cybersecurity technical project manager, or TPM. And their role and responsibilities literally are just taking the security needs and mobilizing them to get done. Some of the certifications that are required within this role: the CISSP, it's a Certified Information Systems Security Professional. You're seeing a lot of people even get like project manager, like a PMP certification. That way you understand soft skills and how to move projects forward and have them from beginning to end. The technology stacks are very different, and a lot of times, I currently act as a hybrid cybersecurity consultant and cybersecurity architect. And the technology stacks I'm utilizing right now are very specific for the company that I work for. These can get difficult to get very wide with. It is one of those things where you're going to have to pick a technology stack that is deployed by a lot of companies to understand them and be able to jump in where you're needed, which my cybersecurity architect role, or the hat that I wear when I put on my cybersecurity architect, is to stand up some of these security solutions or help out the engineers, while also being able to look at like incidents and understand, okay, why is our roadmap not working, or why is this not working? How can we utilize the technology stack that we have now, or how can we add a new technology to get these attackers out because we have a hole in the system? It's the role and responsibility is super senior, almost executive level, very principle oriented, but it requires you knowing a lot, having a lot of experience, and it is super fun. It's one of the roles that you wind up getting paid incredibly well. You're like early 130 to 150 at like a starting cybersecurity consultant level, and it gets upwards of $200,000 as you start getting more senior and more principal. This one has a tendency to be a little less technical focus and a lot more consultative. You essentially are acting as somebody that is consulting your organization or your customer on how to improve their cybersecurity. And with that being said, I know I've alluded to the next one. You know exactly what it is, and it is the cybersecurity architect. Essentially, the cybersecurity architect designs and oversees complex security systems and strategies across an entire enterprise. Architect is going to be the person that designs out the entire system. The architect and consultant, a lot of times in organizations, are one and the same. But the architect, for the most part, if you just want to be kind of like the behind the scenes technical person, this is more likely to be the role for you. There are going to be some soft skills required because you're going to have to go to stakeholders. You're going to have meetings with some of the other engineers and more technical people like the IAM people or auditors or penetration testers in order to understand, give marching orders and how they interact with each other. It usually takes an architect anywhere from like 5 to 10, maybe even 12 years of experience in the industry to really be able to be an effective architect that can put together an entire cybersecurity defense in depth strategy. If you're a person later in your career, let's say 3 to 5 years in, and you're eyeballing wanting to be a security architect, I highly recommend going and learning your path of technology stacks and how all of the networking and cloud environment systems interact with one another, with whatever the organization is that you want to apply for to be a security architect. This requires specificity, it requires a defense in depth knowledge, and it's going to take you a while to get to this level. But when you start getting into either organizations that you want to move up in and become a cybersecurity architect, or if you're eyeballing an organization or different organizations that have these requirements, make sure that you're putting together all of your continuing education learning and cybersecurity education, on the side education, to fulfill that role. You want to be putting in the reps outside of your job for the job that you want. And this one in particular is going to require you with like laser light focus, filling your head with all of those skills that it takes in order to achieve it. Same thing with a cybersecurity consultant. I'm going to create a individual video for a cybersecurity consultant and also for the cybersecurity architect, independent of this one, because the path forward is really difficult. And the only reason I'm even covering them here for somebody that is looking to potentially be a beginner or transition into a different role is if you're beginning with the end in mind, and as you're going along the way, you're keeping these types of jobs in your mind, you might bypass some of the other types of roles that aren't going to lead you here because you're being more focused in getting to being a cybersecurity architect in a shorter period of time. I was very fortunate to be able to become a cybersecurity architect in just 3.5 years of cybersecurity focus in the industry because I was very focused on this role in particular and did everything in my free time to make it happen. You have the ability to do the same thing too, but even if you're starting out now, I want you to have this understanding of each of these roles and how you can shortcut the usual required time and energy that it takes to get into these because you're laser like focused on developing into the person that can take on these roles from a very empowered and a capable manner. I hope that helps. We're going to end it here. Let's jump into the matrix again and do a quick career flow summary. Remember, the entry level SOC analysts, you can get into this with very little experience, 0 to 2 years. You do want to make sure that you have one of these certifications, though. I do highly recommend getting it way before you get in. That ISC2CC should prepare you for everything that you need to be a SOC analyst. Remember, it's free. There's a link right down below. Click on that. I don't get any money from that. It's free. And ISC2 is an amazing cybersecurity organization that is moving the industry forward and off that education to get you this role for absolute free. But Security Plus is pretty typical and standard. I highly recommend getting a Security Plus no matter what if you're going to get into cybersecurity. It's just a good foundation to have. And don't have it listed here, but also the IBM Cybersecurity Analyst. I do have that link again down below. Those in particular for people that are just beginning out will nail you and land you one of your your SOC analyst gigs if you really stand out. Moving on to the junior role, it's that cybersecurity analyst. Going to take you about 1 to 3 years of experience in order to get this. If you want minimum, you need that ISC2CC and Security Plus. But if you want to start getting into better paying jobs as a cybersecurity analyst, the CISA Plus and CEH are really good certifications to get. Moving into mid-level, the IM analyst and the GRC auditor, 1 to 5 years of experience. If you want to become an IM analyst, the SC300 from Microsoft is a great place to start. In fact, if you have no experience, you go get the SC300. You have really good potential of landing one of these IM roles. And with the GRC audit, you can go get a CISA or CRISC, potentially land them, but I do recommend getting into one of these GRC boot camps that teach you all of the governance, risk, and compliance audits as kind of a checklist, because you'll have the capacity to walk into an organization knowing all of the frameworks that it takes in order to get one of these roles and really land. Mid-senior role, penetration tester. Remember, this is width and depth of knowledge. It's going to take some time and energy, a lot of home labbing, a lot of try hack me. Remember, link down below. Career paths of learning the different technologies on how to penetrate a system, privilege escalate, pivot from how you get in, and be able to persist, do recon, etc. 2 to 6 years. You put a 1.5 years into labbing as you have another one of these roles. I guarantee you could get one of these penetration tester jobs, including getting at minimum the CEH, the pen test Plus from CompTIA. I don't have it listed. That is one of them that is considered for pen test, and the OSCP. Getting into more senior and expert roles, the cybersecurity engineer, remember, stands up all the security solutions. It takes about 3 to 8 years to get that. You do want to learn specific security stacks in order to be able to be a cybersecurity engineer so you can stand up those security devices. You want the GSEC and the CASP Plus to demonstrate you're taking your career serious on the key certifications. And getting into the consultant and architect role, remember 5 to 12 years of experience, and this really depends on the companies that you work for, But the consultant, you're probably going to need something along the lines of a PMP, which is a project manager certification, along with a CISSP and the CISM. Remember, these are key certificates that you're going to stack on top of your experience in education. You probably already have Security Plus, CISA Plus, CEH, ISC2CC on top of getting these certifications, and potentially even a master's degree in information systems. And then pivoting into the cybersecurity architect, your education, again, you probably need a cybersecurity master's degree in information systems or cybersecurity engineering or computer engineering. Certifications, AWS and Azure Architect, CISSP with a specificity on the ISS, and that's kind of it. Guys, make sure you still like and subscribe. Stay tuned as we get more in defense in depth on how to create a cybersecurity career. Remember, this is episode 2 in an 8-part series. I will jump in with the next of the series here within a week. Talk to you soon.